All right, it's 12 o'clock. Good Thursday afternoon, Facebook. And Brother Ricky, how you doing, man?
Hey, Chris, how you doing? I'm doing all right, Chris. Yeah.
All right, well, good, man. Again, this straight up 12 noon. We put the notice out, and folks are going to be
Uh-huh.
joining us here in just a few moments for this, I would consider a very important and necessary discussion.
Yes.
I'm just going to go ahead and get started for the sake of time because, again, we've got about a 45-minute, a 30 to 45-minute commitment here, and I want to keep on that. But Rick, I want to tell you, thank you so much for accepting the invitation to do this. I called you on last Thursday about midday, and you were actually in California with sand between your toes, and you took my call. And I appreciate that. Not very many people would take the call on the beach, but you did. So thank
Yeah.
you for that. And it was oddly enough when we started talking about how I felt that we should do this, partly because of when we had our in the huddle discussion with the men on the 25th, there were a lot
Uh-huh.
of things brought out in that discussion with those men that really
Uh-huh.
helped understand that I think we really need to address the area of emotional stability and
True.
how we conquer that. And how when you begin to have these type of discussions, it really leads to a place of healing and it helps folks to tap into maybe things they hadn't tapped into before.
Uh-huh.
Again, as we saw with the men, we started talking about the Me Too movement, and we heard many men who stepped up and talked about the fact that how they had been victimized and how they had suffered molestation, things of that nature. So I think when we start talking about this whole emotional piece, I think it's important that we do it in a way that is responsible. So I didn't want to just jump online and do it by myself. So I said, you know what? I need a professional. And that's what I reached out to you. So as we prepare to get into the conversation, Rick, let's tell folks, first of all, who you are and what you guys do over at Inside Fitness 360.
All right. Thanks, Chris, for having me. I would not avoid taking that call, man. Yeah, so as you kind of told the people, my name is Ricky Sithole, and I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm located out here in Frisco, Texas. And as you say, the name of the practice is Inside Fitness 360. We deal with counseling, life coaching, and the 360 alludes to the fact that we deal with everything on a 360. We have health and wellness, nutrition, and personal training in-house and counseling. So sometimes everything is correlated from the emotional, the mental, and which leads to the behavioral, the health and wellness. So we give you a whole in-house tour when you come and see us here in Frisco. And it's been well received. We stay very busy here in Frisco. So,
You know what? I would imagine that you do. I mean, because again, this type of thing is certainly needed. And I'm
uh-huh.
really relieved in the fact that you were busy because there was a time when folks were not seeking out those type of services
Oh,
as
yes.
much as they should. So I'm relieved in the fact that you're busy and folks are actually doing that today. And that's part of the reason we're having this conversation now is because we want folks to be able to move beyond where they are. And let me tell you a little bit about the Chris Howell Foundation. The Chris Howell Foundation, last couple of years, our focus has really been on really HIV and AIDS awareness.
Uh-huh.
And it's birthed out of the fact that my brother passed away in 2006 due to complications of HIV and AIDS. And that
Uh-huh.
was back to the community and to honor his legacy. It was to really
Uh-huh.
help to empower and to educate people in terms of that the virus and how it's impacting our community.
Uh-huh.
But as we have been working in the community the last couple of years, we have realized that there are some other areas that need to be addressed. And
Uh-huh.
really, if you can empower people, you don't necessarily have to tell them to avoid those risky behaviors that may lead to
Uh-huh.
something such as contracting HIV.
Uh-huh.
So we have really started down this road on a sense of empowerment. We're still focused on the
Uh-huh.
HIV/AIDS awareness, but we're really on a focus of empowerment. And that's what we did with in the huddle meeting with the men. My wife is looking at doing some things with the ladies, and it's doing things like what you and I are doing here today, really
Uh-huh.
educating the community on things that may be impacting us in a way that we may not realize, and then trying to point us in a direction to get the help that we may need to ultimately become the person that we were created to be, and then
Yeah.
come back and serve our community. So that's our focus. Yeah.
Yes, that is a great focus because everything is correlated because sometimes emotional health is what leads us to actually working on engaging in risky behaviors. Because
Yes.
sometimes we can help people change their behavior, but we're not looking at the root. And what we've noticed is everything is rooted in emotional behavior, your emotional well-being and the emotional strength. What's happening on the inside. We hence our name Inside Fitness because we realize that you got to be internally fit, man. Like how we work out on the outside, we got to work on the inside.
Mhm.
So as we looked at that, we realized that everything is correlated. That's why we have the nutrition. That's why we look at solving behaviors from the root because if we kill the roots, the behavior solves itself.
Yeah.
So
Good stuff.
that's why the emotional aspect is really important of this. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it. And because we realize that some folks are just joining us and you're probably just you're out to grab a quick sandwich or a salad or something of that nature, and you got to go back to work. I do want to tell you, you can't stick around for the entire conversation. Be sure to catch it. We're going to keep it here on Facebook, but we'll also post it at chrishowellfoundation.org, chrishowellfoundation.org. It'll be posted there. So if for any reason you have to drop out during the conversation, be sure to just come back and catch it here on Facebook, or do catch it at our website here later today. Rick, as we prepare into this, I was just up late last night, and oddly enough, looked to WFA's website because I like to go to them to try to get my news updates. And I found a report on their website, or it's an article rather, that talks about a Gallup survey that looked at the emotional lives of more than 154,000 people around the world, and found that people are unhappier than they have been in recent years. Now, I'll tell you this. This says that the poll measured a negative experience index, which is described as an average of people's self-reported levels of daily stress, pain, sadness, and anger. And the researchers found that this index is at its highest level since the poll started some 10 years ago. In your study, do you find that people are more stressed and more sad than ever before?
Oh yeah, Chris. It's actually, I think the poll is actually accurate, because we're living in an age of high anxiety and high frustration, high stress levels. And most of the clients, when they come through here, those are the same things: anxiety and depression and stress. They are the number ones, because we ask on our intake forms what is a presenting issue. And a lot of it's coming out as those three. And often it results in anger. So definitely, there are high levels of frustrations and anger. And we've been trying to figure out why and understand how we got to this space. And we're realizing that a lot of it is just because there are more demands on our lives than ever before. And life has become stressful. And in the same study, I was looking at it too a little earlier, and I realized that the areas they were really testing was for people who were actually safety, trust, income, stability, those areas. And the countries that scored higher are the countries that actually felt where the citizens felt better, where they felt safer, where they felt like they had more trust in the sense of community and the sense of well-being, and they could plan for the future. In the most countries, people didn't feel those attributes. So it was actually how people are more stressed out, because they don't see hope for the future, and they just think that things are just gonna get tough, and that results in high anxiety and high stress in most people we meet with over here, and generally around the world, if I might say.
Yeah. Well, I would tell you that whole sense of hopelessness is one that I'm certainly concerned about, and that's something that we really try and fight against, really in a lot of what we do in terms of social media, but also a lot of what we do in terms of video production. We try to fight against that. So as we get into the discussion, man, we highlighted three areas that we wanted to really kind of just pick your brain on and talk about. We talked about emotional stability. Emotional stability, will address that. We'll also address this issue of grief. And then how do we guard our minds? And I don't want to, you almost made me want to start backwards with guarding your mind, because when you talk about the fact that we have more demands on our lives, I think a lot of it is we consume so much information, and that may present to be as a demand, but in a lot of cases doesn't necessarily have to be. But I want to start with the emotional stability piece.
Okay.
That's not just some feel-good term. That's just not something we just threw out there. When you talk about emotional stability, what exactly does that mean?
Now, when we talk about emotional stability in my field, we're actually looking at how well you manage your emotions. And how well means, are you doing it in a healthy way? Are you processing your emotions in a healthy way? Because there is an unhealthy and a healthy way to manage your emotions. And now emotional stability means that you've actually reached the optimum level where you are aware of your emotions, acknowledge them, and process them in a healthy way. So it's not a made-up term. It's really accurate when you talk about it. Yeah.
And again, it's not something to say that you're not going to feel, your emotions are not going to fluctuate, rather, but it's being able to still be able to navigate as healthy in a healthy way and still accomplish the things that you've been set out to accomplish without allowing your emotions to consume you in some way. Is that correct?
Yes, that is really correct, because what you're talking about, because everybody has emotions. We've heard a lot of people talk about, well, I don't have emotions. I don't feel my emotions. I just no, everybody has emotions. If you don't express your emotions, you are acting them out in some way. We'll get a little bit in that. So we want to make sure that we're acknowledging our emotions and processing them in the right way. And the right way, we're talking about reaction versus response, because we're not to react to our emotions. Actually, what your emotions just are, they are just agents of information. They're just here to tell you how you're processing information on the inside. Okay. Because and then they give you an option whether to react or to respond. Now, reaction is normally negative because I'm just reacting based on how I feel. For example, if you make me angry, Chris, reaction is I cuss you or I punch you. I have not thought about it.
I hope you did neither.
No, I would like to think I have some emotional stability, Chris.
Okay, good.
But when I respond, I get to look at the emotion and say, okay, Chris made me angry. What is it that Chris said that's made me angry? Because sometimes my emotional response is tied to a belief system that I have inside of me. It's got nothing to do with you, Chris, because if I'm emotionally well, you can say whatever you want and offend me. The least I can do is tell you. But if I react to it, it means that it's hit a place of unresolved pain within me that I need to look at. So my response, I have to sit and think, okay, Chris said this, what do I do? This is offensive. Why is it offensive? And which response should I give to Chris? I need to sit down and say, Chris, please don't do that, because this upsets me because of that and that and that. So that's reaction versus response. But when we're dealing with emotions. Now, so they're just here to serve us and to tell us how we're processing information and how to point where we need to focus to get the internal healing that we require. Because in psychology, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, all right. Because in psychology, we have realized that emotional health is actually developed between the age of 0 to 7. That's why we always go back and say, tell us about your childhood, because that's where the normal reaction happens. Now, if your normal growth is interrupted by trauma or something happens in your life, then normal growth is interrupted and it starts being more like a protection system where I have to enact defense systems to protect my emotional being so I don't experience a painful experience. Now, in a child mind who's not really mature, it might come up with very risky ways of protecting yourself, shutting yourself emotionally and not experiencing them. And that's how we get into places where we turn into adults who don't have emotional intelligence or know how to manage emotions, because this stuff is never really taught. It's stuff that we just told, man up, do something about it. Men don't cry, girls don't do this. A lady never speaks in public, a lady never does that. So all this is actually affecting the way we process emotions and how we respond to life. And a lot of time when we met with life issues and life challenges, we're not fully equipped to handle emotions as adults because we're still processing them, one, on our emotional health based on this family that we grew up in, what we were taught, what we learned, and what we saw on TV. And so all that comes into play. And as a result, sometimes we might not do the best job. I know I didn't do it until I was in my late adulthood when I started on this journey to really figure out what's going on the inside. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Man, I will tell you, see, that's why we brought you here, because I mean, that's the type of information that we need, because I mean, as you speak about this, we all have to look at our own lives and think about 0 to 7, that period of our lives, and did we develop that emotional stability? And I will say I did, and that's why we're really looking to try and do that now to become better today, to also who it is we were trying to be. I want to get into this as we get into the call more, because when you talk about information and things being thrown at us, I mean, today we have so many things being thrown at us. I mean, for example, right now in Dallas, and I believe the services are just getting underway for both of them, John, certainly our condolences to his family. And, but when you and I scheduled this thing on Thursday, there were only a few things that we were going to really highlight and talk about. And it really started from the fact of talking about, we get the news of the death of celebrities, things of that nature. We get the news of storms. And right now, folks are being evacuated from various places. So my office kind of put together a couple of things. And when Irma handed me this yesterday, there were several things on here. Recent celebrity deaths. I hadn't even heard of some of these, or had forgotten about some of them. But in just a few weeks, we had Mac Miller, a young man who potentially over September 7th. Burt Reynolds passed away September 6th. Jason Hairston, 49ers football player, September 4th, apparently, I guess maybe committed suicide, allegedly committed suicide. Aretha Franklin, August 16th. So when you, and John McCain, we don't have on here, passed away as well. You talk about the weather-related issues that are taking place right now with the evacuation. All of this stuff coming at us all the time. And then we have our own personal issues. You jump on Facebook and you have friends who have lost loved ones. You're dealing with personal issues. Maybe you've lost a loved one. How do we take all of this information that's been coming to us? Even we say, we put up our closed for spiritual maintenance sign on Facebook and we log off Facebook. That's not enough, because then you go to pump gas and there's monitors in your face at the gas station giving you information. And then you go to the office and there's Negative Nancy and Dangerous Danny who comes to your desk to share information about things that are going on that you're trying to find out. How do we guard our mind against all this information? And if we can't guard our minds, how do we process it?
You know, Chris, because this is really difficult, because you're right. Constantly, there's information, phones buzzing, notifications of all this that happens. And the thing is, technology has advanced a whole lot more, but the human emotional system still remains constant. It still processes information the way it did 1,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago. The human system still processes information the same way, but technology has advanced. Now, the Bible talks about he who does not guard his soul is like a city without walls, because when he talks about guarding and managing your soul, it means that you have an active part to manage, because all this information, it affects us, because what it threatens our sense of safety and security, and it makes us feel vulnerable, because death in itself, when we experience it, it creates a vulnerability to us, because we want to have a sense of wanting to think we're going to live forever, that we're going to be here. But when death invades your camp, it kind of leaves you with a sense of vulnerability, and your safety is taken. Now, when the news keeps on coming, Aretha Franklin, Mac Miller, and we look at celebrities as if, wow, they have the best life, then how are we going to survive if it's happening to us, you know? And so constant trauma. So when we talk about guarding ourselves, we got to choose how much information we allow to get in, because the human mind can process so much, and we have to choose what comes in and what goes out. So I have to guard, how much news am I going to watch? Would I rather read it? Because, for example, I read my news on NPR because they just report the news, you know, and I just love the reporting there. And I form my own opinion, because if I do that and I turn on to different news networks, they're all reporting the same thing in a different twist. And we talked about this, that it's re-traumatizing you every time you hear about this, because it just passed, I think it was 10 years to Michael Jackson's death, and it was on TV again, reinvesting and reinvestigating, revisiting this over and over, analyzing it again, and oh boy, can we analyze this stuff on TV? And I wonder the families that have to relive these experiences. So first, we got to guard our mind. We got to choose what we got to do. What am I allowing in and what am I allowing out? And number two, I have to understand that I'm a finite being. How the human system works, it can only take so much. I need to make time to meditate. Some call it quiet time. Spend time accessing what's going on in my system, a time of quietness, because also we are on the go a lot. We are very busy. We're running, I'm doing this, taking this. We need time to stop that and just calm down and get in touch with yourself. How am I feeling about things? What do I think about things? How do I see myself? You know, because sometimes we tend to miss these cues and keep on running, and eventually we end up with like an emotional breakdown. Now, those things we mentioned earlier, anxiety, depression, stress, headaches, migraines, all these things is your body sending you symptoms to say, we're not doing too well in here. We're not surviving well. We're not processing. There's something wrong with the emotional processing system. You need to slow down, take stock, clean yourself out, and get back on track. So those are a few things I could suggest just now. Yeah.
Good stuff, man. And I mean, and we've got folks jumping online with us. And if you're just joining us, thank you so much for jumping on. We're having a discussion regarding mental and emotional wellness. We're talking with Rick Sithole. He's with Inside Fitness 360 in Frisco, Texas. If you're outside of the Dallas area, certainly go to chrishowellfoundation.org and we'll have some resources to point you to as well. But Rick, give them your website. We have not given the folks your website. What's your website?
The website is www.insidefitness.us.
All right. So go to his website. So we've kind of talked about this, and we talked about the emotional stability piece. I listed off a number of things that we're, of course, inundated with from a news standpoint. Yeah. So from a grief standpoint, let's talk about grief. We've talked about emotional stability. Let's get into grief. As we talk about grief, most often we associate it only with death. But there's so many other areas that can cause grief in our lives. And some of the ways that we looked at was divorce or the breakup of a relationship. The loss of your health. Maybe your health is not as good as it once was. That puts you into a state of grief. The loss of a job, the loss of financial stability, a miscarriage, retirement. You know, these are some other areas that we typically don't associate with grief, but could find ourselves grieving and not really know exactly what's going on with it. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, that is really correct, Chris, because grief is actually any change that we mourn, because what we're really mourning is what was, what is, and the third part is walking to the stage of acceptance of what the new normal is. So anytime there is a process from the time a change happens, I have to grieve what was and what will never be. Because the same things are shared across any change, because even when we're talking about death, those are the three things that we're mourning, because my life has shifted. I had built a sense of definition, my identity around this situation, around the way life was, but now I cannot live like that anymore, because even a job loss, hey, my finances are threatened. Will I ever come back to the same level again? I had plans that I thought I was going to do, you know, even divorce. We had planned a life. We're going to grow old together on the porch and sipping iced tea and say we made it. But when life changes and something comes in and interrupts my beliefs, then I have to mourn the process. And I have to redefine who I am as a person without that stuff that's changed now, because I have to look at my life differently and forge a new identity. So all these are the different things. Now, when we look at grief in psychology, we talk about, there's a lady called Kubler-Ross. She came up with 5 stages of grief, and I'll list them: denial, bargaining, anger, depression, and acceptance. Now, this is just a guideline, and we don't necessarily have to go through all these stages, and sometimes we go through them in different places, because I remember when my dad died, anger was a big deal. And thinking back to the study that we talked about, I think a lot of people are grieving what life was, because there's a lot of anger in the atmosphere nowadays. People are really frustrated, high stress, because their sense of security and hope, and they're grieving what was. So after that, we might go into depression, feelings of depression. A lot of people might experience that. And then after that, we gradually move towards acceptance. Now, as we talk about emotional and processing these things, what we got to acknowledge is that grieving is a normal part of life. It is part of the human experience. We're going to have good times. We're going to have sad times. We're going to lose loved ones. We're going to lose things. And it is part of our human nature to allow ourselves to develop and to grow to the next level and be okay. But we also got to acknowledge the fact that it's a journey, being from experiencing the loss to the time that I actually accept the new normal, and that everything is good for you. Now we're in a situation where, you know, I do work with mental health, mental psychiatrists and the mental health community. I'm really involved in that because, you know, my family, there's a lot of mental health history in my family. Now, I don't knock medication. Medication is good. Everybody needs to take medication if you need it, because it makes your life better. But we are at a place when we take medication to avoid experiencing life, then we have an issue.
Yeah.
Because life is going to be painful. It's going to have difficult things. So pain is a part of life. Actually, pain, what it is, it's a catalyst for change. It's here to serve you to say it's time to grow, it's time to change. So if I redefine my relationship with pain, I'll be able to manage a lot of these grieving processes, because everything that what we really grieve is the pain, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, the loss of stability, divorce. There's going to be the pain of detachment, and that pain, I have to accept it as a normal part of life and understand that I have the strength that's required to process through these painful emotions, and I'm going to be okay. They're not here to kill me. They're here to serve me to heal through a process of grief.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Good stuff, Rick. And I'm looking at that clock on your wall. Thank you for having it there. It's allowing me to keep up with the time. So I want to ask, for those of you who are joining us on Facebook, thank you so much, Danelle Ballard, Louis Bright, Rachel Carter, let's see here, I should start calling name, Arbor Wilson, Jesse Halverson. All of you that are on Facebook, if you have a question, please shoot us a question, because we do want to allow for you to ask questions. We don't just talk to you, but we do want to engage with you. So I will try and watch here for your questions. So should you have a question, we're only on for the next maybe 10 minutes or so. So we want to allow time for you to be able to get a question in for Rick as well. So Rick, we've talked about the emotional stability. We've talked about the grieving process and what that looks like. Now, when we get into this whole guarding of your mind, like we talked about before, yeah, you can put up the closed for spiritual maintenance sign on Facebook, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to still be inundated with information. So you talked about meditation. I like that. What are some other ways that you would suggest that we look at guiding or guarding our mind? Okay. Now, you know, what I had to do for myself, and this works because I realized that I had so many demands. Run the CEO here at Inside Fitness. I do still see clients. I do have other business endeavors and also family, and all those things are demands on my life. But now as I look at it, I figured out I have to find balance. I had to come to the realization that everything in life we're not to respond to. You know, so I got to choose my pace and only respond to the things that pertain to me. I got to choose a comfortable pace for me to run in, and I got to look at the things that I need to do and respond to those, and take care of yourself. Work out. I have a workout program every morning, 6:30. I try to work out. Calms my mind. I have my meditation. I detach and choose the time that I'm going to engage in information and what information to get into. And having fun. Do you know fun is a big prerequisite? We can't be busy all the time. Fun is a good time because you get in touch with yourself and you get a detox, and also just engage with other people. Yeah. Because that's why human beings were social creatures, because something happens. And the biggest myth out there is that I'm going through something that's unique and that no one else will understand. The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. And in our field, we hear this, oh, I'm going to tell you something new, but it's all been done. You're experiencing it just differently. So engaging with other individuals makes a big difference, and investing time with family and friends. And the biggest one, since I'm over 40 now, rest, and just resting. That's a good one. And that's the one that seems like we find the most difficulty in doing, because even when we're not actively doing something, we're not resting because we're still engaged in our phones and all the things that are going on online. Exactly. And that's right. And I'm glad you mentioned the phone, even putting the phone down, just saying no electronics, just sit down and just do nothing. Those are some things that have gone out of fashion, but they're really, because what we're trying to do is to give our mind a break. From processing everything, and just relax and enjoy and take in everything, flowers, the park, nature, just, re-engage with life and people. And it makes a big difference. I will tell you, you talked about the fact of really you choosing the time and when you're going to engage with information. I think that's extremely important. One of the things I've had to do is actually, when I go to bed at night, is put my phone clear on the other side of the room. And I know it was hard for me to do because we're always thinking we have kids, What if something happens in the middle of the night? I've got to be the rest of the savior, so I can't dare do that. But I have had to do that because I'll find myself, if I didn't do that, in the middle of the night, I wake up, first thing I do is grab my phone. When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is grab my phone. So I'm really just inundating myself with the information when I really need to really process, gather my thoughts, and get prepared to receive whatever it is I'm going to receive when I pick up that phone.
Yeah.
Is that something you're talking about when you say you choose the time?
Yes, that is true because I choose the time to engage with my phone. I just shut down, and at night, it's time to just relax and wind down and shut down my mind and rest and prepare for the next day and what I'm going to do. So that's a good practice, Chris. You know what I mean? That's a good practice because it helps your mind stay regenerated and focused because nobody can process information. The human system does not allow that to continuously go. It needs time to shut down for resting, repair, and maintenance, and cannot be inundated with information continuously because continuous stimulation has a problem because it's actually showing up, just a fun fact, a lot of kids right now, they're having a hard time focusing in school because ever since they're 1 or 2, they're continuously stimulated with iPads. No teachers can compete with those type of things of continuous stimulation because the human mind is not mapped to do that. It should shut down and slow down at times. So you're right on when you talk about that. Yeah.
Well, Rick, again, I want to appreciate you. I am glad that you did not put down your phone while you were on the beach last week. Or we probably wouldn't be having this discussion.
See, I still got a lot to learn.
So I'm glad you put it down after.
I still got a lot to learn.
But man, I really appreciate you because I believe now more than ever. I mean, I will tell you personally, I have just been on an emotional roller coaster the last few weeks because everything that's coming in, I mean, you've got your own things you're dealing with, and then you've got the storms now, the folks being evacuated. You've got this situation this dark cloud that's hanging over Dallas. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, that thing has just really I went from anger to sadness to frustration to all these different emotions. And it's like, man, it was so ironic because we had scheduled this prior to all this stuff happening. So I said, now even more, I need to talk with Rick and maybe just go to his office and lay on the couch because I really need to figure out how to manage this. So I appreciate you for sharing the information that you've shared. As we prepare to land this plane, because again, I'm looking at your clock on the wall there. What word of encouragement would you give to us? Because again, we're following now we're going to follow trials, we'll follow funerals as they take place, things of that nature. We're following the storms that are going on, whether you know someone on the East Coast or not. But we're still tracking all of this information because again, we're concerned. How do we manage this as we go through the next several weeks?
And I know these traumatic events and they threaten our security and our safety. But one thing that I've just learned to understand that is, sometimes it's not up to us to choose the times that we live in, but what's up to us is what to do with the times that we're here that we're living in. That's the only option we have. And we have the choice to respond and also to know that everything will always work out. Everything is going to be fine. We will be okay. And this is not to consume us, but to understand that life is rigged in our favor. We have, in the spiritual aspect working for us. We are here and everything. I believe that life is actually an experiment happening in a lab. Everything is under control. It's going to work out. The reason why we feel that way is because we focus on the negative news and the negative things that are happening. And those are the things that are highlighted. I can bet you and challenge you that today we can look at many, many, many positive things that are happening in the world. So as I look at these things, we got to find a balance to say, yes, there's the negative and the unpleasant things happening, but we also have the good stuff that's happening in life so that we can balance the two and not only focus on the negative, because balance is all that we need. That's all that we got to strive for. And everything's going to be okay. Life is rigged in your favor. That's what it is. It's going to be okay. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Rick, give us your website one more time.
All right. You can learn more about Inside Fitness at insidefitness.us. You can learn about all the products and services that we offer, and we'll be delighted to see you. Anybody who wants to come and visit us at Inside Fitness, we'll be glad to walk that aspect of your life with you. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I am checking our Facebook post here. I do not see any questions for you, so that just means that you have covered it so well that folks did not have any questions. As we prepare to wrap this up, because we want folks to allow folks time to grab their lunch and go back to their office or wherever it is they need to be. But want to again tell you, the Chris Howell Foundation, again, the reason we're looking to do this is really to help to empower our community, to help us to move beyond where we are, to really give us that sense of hope. Because we talked about it earlier, Rick, it just seems that in some cases, there's a sense of hopelessness that's looming out there, and that should not be the case. Things are going to be all right, like you just indicated. Again, it's just a matter of really helping us to be in a position where we need to be. I did see someone just posted insidefitness.us. Great job. Thank you so much, Karen Lloyd, for posting that. But so again, for the Chris Howell Foundation, it is chrishowellfoundation.org. For those of you who are in Dallas, I will be remiss if I did not do this. My daughter will kill me. She told me to be sure to mention, we talked about fun. Well, Rick, we've got tickets. We have a partnership with the State Fair of Texas, and we're actually giving folks fair tickets. If they give a $40 donation to the Chris Howell Foundation, we're giving you 4 tickets. That's a savings value of $32.
Oh, wow.
So go to chrishowellfoundation.org, make your donation. That's one of the ways you can get out and have some fun beginning September 28th through October 21st. So we're grateful to the State Fair for that partnership that we have with them. I'm trying to just stall for a minute, Rick, just to make sure we don't have one final question. And if we don't, we're going to close this out. And again, my brother, I really appreciate you for taking the time to do this. It was important that we do it. And again, you were on vacation when we contacted you. You said, hey, I'm back. And when I get back, we'll make sure to get it done. So I appreciate it.
No, thanks.
We don't have any questions.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Yeah.
All right. Well, Karen, you're just all on it. She just posted chrishowellfoundation.org. Again, the video will be made available here on Facebook, and then we will also post it later today at chrishowellfoundation.org. So hats off to you, Rick, for joining us, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today, audience, to join us as well.
All right.
We'll talk to you
Thanks, Chris. All right. Bye-bye.